Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining me here at another live stream event. My name is Melissa Favela, and I am the community educator for Southern Caregiver Resource Center, where our mission is caring for those who care for others. Now, I want you to make sure that you are comfortable while watching this if possible, or watch it at your own time. It will be available after the live stream to watch at your own time. Today's presentation is called From Heart to Wallet, the Financial Reality of Caregiving. So feel free to grab a notepad, feel free to grab a pen, take some notes, or again, this live stream will be available afterwards to watch at your own time. So if you're ready, let's get started. So our learning objectives for today, we will be identifying the financial challenges family caregivers may face, learn the importance of managing finances for sustainable caregiving, and explore ways to prepare financially. So basically, this presentation will focus on the financial aspect of caregiving, because even though the practical aspect of caregiving, maybe other things that come to mind, the financial aspect is very big, it's very relevant. So we're gonna dive right into it. Next slide, please. So first, as you know, we'd like to start off with some statistics as to why this is relevant, and hopefully this gives you a different perspective of why financials and caregiving are so important to consider and to discuss. So in a report done by AARP in 2020, it mentioned, or it found, that caregivers provided an average of 23.7 hours of care per week, and this is unpaid care. Additionally, the same report found that caregivers caring for someone with dementia in San Diego County provided 285 million hours of unpaid care, which of course this is expected to increase to 333.1 million hours in the upcoming years. And this is done in 2020. We have just started 2025, so we can definitely assume that the hours are increasing year by year. Another report stated that 3 in 10 caregivers reported doing the care recipient's finances, and they reported them as being time consuming. And of course, this can be for a number of reasons, but the thing to consider here is that it is time consuming. It takes time and effort to take care of someone else's finances. And a survey done by AARP in 2021 found that an average of 26% of the caregiver's income per year was used in caregiving responsibilities or caregiving expenses. If we're talking about an average dollar number, it's about $7,000 a year that individual family caregivers were spending in their caregiving responsibilities. Of course, they found that there were some variables by income, by age, by cultural background, but this is an average, and this is a significant average if we think about it. 26% of annual income, or about $7,000 a year. So if this is making you wonder how much you may be spending a year in your caregiving responsibilities, it's a good start. Next slide, please. So now that we know some statistics, now that we have some numbers, here are some actionable steps that you can take to assess the cost of caregiving, right? And this is by no means a complete list, but it is there to help you start assessing what may be some of the costs that are in your financial responsibility as a caregiver. So, for example, some daily expenses might include rent, food, and utilities. Some caregivers help the care recipient pay rent, if not fully, maybe part of the rent. Maybe they provide meals. And we know that the cost of food and groceries has gone up in the last few years, and that may be a significant amount of money that is being spent there. Also, utilities, right? So the caregiver may be in charge or responsible of paying some of the utilities of the care receiver. Some direct costs that you might consider reviewing or taking into consideration are medical bills, right? If the care receiver has to see medical providers regularly, then there might be a copay. And even though, if let's say it's a low copay, maybe $10, $15, it may add up. So that's another thing to consider. Also, medications. If there's a copay for medications, if medications need to be paid fully by the care receiver, by the caregiver. That's another thing to consider. Home modifications. If the care receiver needs any type of home modifications, grab bars, ramps, etc., that's something else to consider. And of course, equipment. If there are any type of medical equipment that is necessary for the caregiver to have a better quality of life, we have to assess if this will be paid by medical insurance or if we have to pay out of pocket. And again, this is just a list to get you started. Indirect costs. We may have lost income. As caregivers, we may need to ask for time off to take the care receiver to the doctor, or if there's an emergency, right? So time off work. Of course, we can also have an emotional toll. So this is maybe not necessarily a direct link to our financial situation, but it definitely can affect our, let's say, our work output, right? How we, the amount of time off that we need from work. And of course, stress, right? So there are different types of strain, but it can still impact our financial situation. Additionally, we have estimated costs for long-term care. Let's say if the caregiver still needs to have some sort of in-home assistance for the care receiver, right? That is going to be an extra cost. Or if the care receiver needs to be in a nursing home, right? These are some of the long-term care expenses that we might encounter as caregivers. And then, of course, there are unexpected expenses such as emergency or unplanned treatments. So, again, this is a list to help you start assessing the possible cost of caregiving. Maybe if it's not something that is being done now, but it may happen in the future. It may be a financial responsibility for the future. Next slide, please. So now that we have started assessing our financials when it comes to caregiving, we should still assess our own financial health as caregivers, as individuals, right? So what should we do? Well, we should review our current income, what that is, maybe annual income, monthly income, whatever is easiest for you, but ultimately know how much income you're receiving, whether it be from a regular job, maybe someone is also working part-time, whatever, wherever your income may come from. Also, the expenses. And for expenses, we need to be realistic, and expenses may vary by month to month. So taking that into consideration. Savings, if there are any savings available. And also the amount of debt that we may have, right? It could be credit cards, it could be mortgage, it could be something else. But basically, setting up a review of our financial health. And of course, considering the budget that we may have, right? Based on our assessment, what is my budget? How will caregiving affect my finances, right? And these steps are to help you understand how caregiving may change your personal finances. It may lead to income reduction or additional costs. And some of the actionable steps that you can take from this step is to create a detailed family or personal budget. So again, being very realistic as to what your spending budget is versus your income, and analyze potential income loss due to caregiving on those financial aspects of caregiving. And this, of course, ideally, it would be present and possible future income loss due to caregiving. Because if we are caregiving long term, then it may look different from now. to what it may look like in the future. And how will these changes in responsibilities and caregiving affect your finances? So, all of these are great places to start when it comes to your financial health. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about assessing care receivers' financial situation. Okay, and this is very important, but it can also be very challenging. So, a place to start will be to review if the care receiver has any assets that might be helpful, that might be used by the care receiver or caregiver to aid in care and will support the care in a financial way. Also, if there are any income sources that might be available. Also, if there's, for example, debt that we might need to take into consideration. If there are any life or benefits, life insurance like long-term care insurance, health coverage, financial assistance. And then, of course, a big part of reviewing these assets, these debts, these income sources are hopefully are there by discussing the financial wishes of the care receiver, having the proper legal documents to really have these documents available. So, for example, making sure that there's a power of attorney, that there's a living will or will. So, basically, anything that will facilitate the caregiver in assessing or accessing the care receiver's financial situation. Now, it will be, again, very helpful to gather these financial statements and documents if possible. If they're not readily available, then figuring out what we need to do to have them as soon as possible. And of course, the sooner we plan this, the sooner we get this, the easier it will be, because if we wait till the last moment, let's say we are caring for someone who has a cognitive impairment, the more we wait, the more challenging it will be to have these documents. So it could be very helpful to set up meetings with financial advisors or legal professionals if necessary, earlier in the caregiving process versus later. It can really facilitate care down the line. It can really reduce these stressful financial situations that may arise later in caregiving. So, again, the earlier the better. And this is a list to hopefully get you started as to what would be good to assess earlier rather than later. Next slide, please. And of course, money is often an emotional issue. So, when we are thinking about finances and being a caregiver, maybe we may be thinking about it as simple steps, right? I need A to get to B to get to C. But we are forgetting, or we may forget, that money is an emotional issue. Talking about money may be very difficult for some generations, and some generations may react differently to someone else handling their finances. This may require several long conversations, family meetings. For example, older generations tend to have more of a what is commonly known as a depression mentality, right? Where they save money for a rainy day, and it can really be difficult for them to admit that the rainy day has arrived, right? Maybe in their older age. So maybe their rainy day comes in the form of them needing home care or having larger medical expenses. Now, it could be difficult to let their adult children handle their financial situation or even know about their financial situation or finances. Now, it may be even more difficult for them to admit that the money that is saved needs to be used for their own care versus leaving it as an inheritance, right? So there are different factors to consider here. And of course, when it comes to the Caregivers, let's say they're the children, the adult children, well, maybe the practicality of having access to the care receiver's money is really not there. It's non-existent because it's such a difficult conversation for the care receiver. Now, this can lead on to other emotional issues, such as leading the caregiver to feel like the care receiver doesn't trust them with their financial situation, or that there isn't enough money for elder care. And so there might be big feelings, resentments that come up. And of course, this can all lead to complications when it comes to caregiving, right? Maybe there isn't trust, there isn't transparency for whatever reason. So if this is the case, we do suggest that, as a caregiver, you consider professional assistance if you're having trouble separating finances from emotional issues, right? And maybe this is kind of a normal scenario, but we can have best case scenarios where there is open communication and transparency when it comes to financial aspects of caregiving, or we may have an even tougher situation where, because the relationship of caregiver care receiver is so fractured, that money is not even something that can be mentioned, right? So again, making sure that we're thinking outside the box, that we might consider professional assistance. And it might feel like a big effort, like a very big challenge, but ultimately having these conversations early on, similar to the planning, can save us very big financial challenges down the road of our caregiving journey. Next slide, please. So continuing the financial aspect of caregiving, finances are tough to discuss with the care receiver, right? Or they can be. So if we're bringing in another factor, which is the care team, it could be a tougher aspect to discuss, right? And who the care team might be, well, it may be family members and maybe other people. So we do have to figure out who is relevant to this financial discussion when it comes to caregiving, right? So if this needs to be discussed with an existing team, or it needs to be discussed with maybe a team that isn't there yet, but maybe it does need to be formed to assess and have these financial responsibilities discussed. So if there is a financial team or a care team, if there needs to be a care team, it's important to hold regular family meetings to discuss not just the practical aspects of care, but also finances. And because we are talking about money and we want transparency and accountability, we do recommend that we have a written record of decisions and agreements. And this should really be across the board when it comes to caregiving, but even more so when we're talking about financial situations or money talks. So really making sure that we're communicating and that the people involved, the family members or the care team, that they understand their roles and financial contributions, right? Or if, let's say, we have a family member who cannot contribute financially, but maybe they can contribute in another way, right? So really the options of how this can be managed or discussed, these options are endless, but the goal is to discuss them continuously, almost, because care will change as time goes by. So will the financial responsibilities. So as it changes, as things move along, we do need to regularly update the care plan as financial circumstances change. So again, making sure that there's accountability, transparency, and responsibility among those that are part of the caregiving team, especially when it comes to finances. Next slide, please. Now, some other things to consider. maybe to be able to talk about finances and feel more organized, it's a good thing to create a financial caregiving plan. For example, this will help us establish clear goals for caregiving, and this will be based on previous assessments. What is doable? What is not doable? What is needed? What are some of those priorities in terms of care that will cost us money, right? What are some of the things that maybe are needed now, but maybe needed in the future? So having these clear goals and kind of like a guide, a path, will help us have more of a financial planning and hopefully stability. So we do need to plan for short-term financial needs, but also long-term financial needs, right? So needing to include these caregiving expenses on our budget, and also maybe hopefully have something saved up for unexpected costs. And it could reflect both current and anticipated costs. A lot of the times, it's also recommended, if possible, to set up a dedicated caregiving account for expenses. And it could be, if it's only one caregiver or if there are multiple caregivers, it could be an account where everybody contributes, and it's there for any of these caregiving expenses that may come up. So, again, the possibilities as to how to organize are endless, and really they should be individualized to what works best for you and your caregiving team. So sometimes we just need to think outside the box. But remember, there are options, there are different ways to manage financial situations when it comes to caregiving. Next slide, please. Now, another big aspect of caregiving, and one that a lot of people may feel a little bit more uncomfortable with or not as assertive with, are the understanding of legal situations and tax issues. So this is the very individualized, very personal topic. So I won't be giving specific examples or suggestions, but really what we would suggest is that you consult an attorney if you're needing a power of attorney, guardianship, or estate planning, because this will look different for everyone in the caregiving situation. So it would be a good idea, if possible, to consult a professional that does this. Additionally, you as a caregiver may investigate possible tax deductions. For example, any caregiving related medical expenses, tax credit for caregivers. And of course, it's important that you keep track of all these expenses for your tax purposes, right? So making sure that we have all the paperwork related to this. In case we do qualify for these types of tax deductions. Now, if you are a client of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, we do have a program for caregivers to help with their financial questions. If you're not a client of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, but you are a caregiver and you want to see if you qualify for our services, please reach out to us. I'll have the contact information at the end of the slides. But SCRC does have a program for caregivers to help with these financial questions. So we are here to help you as a caregiver. And of course, it includes these legal and financial aspects of caregiving. Next slide, please. So now we're going to transition a little bit more into work and elder care, because as we are seeing more and more people becoming family caregivers, but also maybe raising children or still having school-age children, what we call that sandwich generation, we may have these caregivers that are working full-time, raising a family, but also taking care of someone, not in their spare time, because there is no spare time, but additionally to their regular responsibilities. So when it comes to that caregiver who needs to work but also needs to care, there really needs to be some conversation around this and a lot of assessing, right? For example, assessing finances. If we're considering leaving work for caregiving, whether that be leaving work altogether, or maybe taking time off work and how that reflects on our income per se and other aspects of work. But this really can affect the financial health of the caregiver and future planning for them as well, right? So for example, if we leave work or if we take extra time off work, that can lead to a loss of a regular paycheck. This can lead to a loss of income in the long run, right? And if, let's say, the caregiver is not contributing as much as they would like to their social security benefits, pension, that can really affect their long-term future. Even, when it comes to their financials, if they ever need the caregiver in their life, right? So the loss of health insurance, the ability to pay out of pocket if something happens in terms of illness. So these are a lot of things to consider, right? Additionally, we are seeing a lot of younger generation caregivers. So caregivers in their 20s, even early 30s. And these caregivers may need to leave their studies. They may need to leave school to work, but they might not be able to have a work that is regular or has a big financial impact on them. So we really need to consider all of these things when it comes to work and elder care, right? So we need to figure out if we're going to lose income, lose health insurance, inhibit future job advancement, and also what it means for the caregiver, for their future, for their care in the future. So lots to consider, but hopefully this will get the conversation started if it's not already. Next slide, please. Some other things to consider: financial services for caregivers, right? So the caregiver insurance can be long-term care or life insurance with caregiving benefits known as hybrid policy, a health savings account for medical expenses, or even reverse mortgages or home equity loans to finance home modifications. So these are things that can be applied to the caregiver, of course, or that even the care receiver may have, right? They might have long-term care insurance, etc. So of course, figuring out what would be best for us can be time consuming and stressful, and will be, of course, very specific to your needs. So it really is important to spend time doing the research into appropriate insurance options and see what would be best for your specific situation. Next slide, please. And of course, we have financial resources. So it is important as a caregiver to know that you are not alone. As we saw in the earlier slide, there are a lot of caregivers in the country, in San Diego County. So, really, there are some government programs that you might be able to qualify for, or your care receiver to qualify for as well, like Medicaid, Social Security disability insurance, supplemental security income, and other resources. There are also local community programs, such as what SCRC offers, right? Local nonprofit organizations that give different types of support to family caregivers. And if you are a caregiver that is in the workforce, you may have some employer benefits, such as paid family leave, maybe flexible work schedules, and other things that you may be able to access via your employer. And if you are a veteran or your care receiver is a veteran, then it would be a good idea to contact VA Healthcare and see what resources they have available to you and your care receivers. So again, remembering that you are not alone, that there are resources out there that might be able to help you or that you may be able to qualify for. Next slide, please. And I already mentioned one of the services that Southern Caregiver Resource Center offers. in this financial aspect of caregiving. And that is one of the services that we offer. However, because SCRC has been serving family caregivers for 37 years, we do have other in demand materials that you may access. For example, we do have in our video logs, our live stream logs, these, for example, 3 videos that I suggest. One of them is year-end estate and financial planning. It was recorded during a live workshop, so you'll be able to watch that if you'd like. We also have a live stream on long-term care planning and another one on Medi-Cal changes and the impact on family caregivers. So again, these videos are there. You can review them. You can start conversations based on these videos. They're there to give you information. Additionally, we have another resource, which is our podcast called Let's Talk Caregiving. And if I would suggest 2 episodes that talk about caregiving and financials, it would be episode 17 and episode 44. So if you are interested in learning more about caregiving and financial aspects of caregiving, these would be some great resources that SCRC already has. They're in existence. So all you have to do is go to our website, and which is www.caregivercenter.org, and you go to the iCare portal tab, and you'll be able to access these videos and the podcast as well. So right there, you have it on screen. Or if you have any questions as to where to access this information, you can give us a call at 858-268-4432. Next slide, please. Additionally, we also have fact sheets, right? Because we've been talking about having family meetings, because we've been talking about maybe planning and reviewing and having a checklist, we do have these actual fact sheets that you can print out and read at your own time. And all you have to do is same thing. You go to our website, you go on to Programs and Services tab, and it will be the last button on that tab that says fact sheets. And you can browse, we have a lot of them, but these specific titles pertain to being a caregiver and the financial aspects of caregiving. So for example, if you are considering choosing a financial planner, we have a fact sheet that can help you plan for that, or maybe give you some pointers as to what to consider. We also have another one on legal issues and consultation. We also have another one specific to LGBTQ plus caregivers and legal issues they may encounter. Legal planning for incapacity, which is a big reality. Like we talked already, work and elder care, right? So we do have a fact sheet that talks about, hey, if a caregiver is considering quitting their job to become a full-time caregiver, what are some of the things to consider? And then, of course, more of legal aspect of protective proceedings such as guardianships and conservatorships and legal planning for incapacity. So these fact sheets are there to help you, to guide you, to give you some more insight as to some of the financial aspects when it comes to caregiving. Next slide, please. Now, it is important as a caregiver not to forget our own financial well-being, right? So it is important to not ignore your long-term financial health, and we've been mentioning this throughout the presentation. So making sure that you're setting time aside for financial self-care and planning, right? That we're not just focusing on the financial aspects of the care receiver, but also our own financial health and our own financial situation. Also to consider retirement savings, personal insurance, and emergency funds, making sure that we're tracking and protecting them for our own possible future care receiver needs. So this is something that is truly, truly important. A lot of the times we consider caregiving for someone else our biggest priority, right? And I'm sure it is. However, as an individual that may need caregiving services in their future, this is something to consider as well. Am I able to do that? Am I able to save for that, right? Will I have financial support from someone else? Will I be self sufficient financially? So, all of these things are important to consider when it comes to being a caregiver. And of course, self care, right? Self care is very important when it comes to caregiving. And I still mention it in this financial health live stream. It's still important to take breaks to help hopefully avoid burnout. And this can, it's important because it can directly affect your financial situation if you're working and caregiving and raising a family and not taking time for yourself. That will most surely lead to burnout, and ultimately all of the aspects in your life will be affected. So really making sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you are taking care of your own well-being as well. Next slide, please. So nothing like the present. So preparing now for the future. We want to make sure that we're taking proactive steps to prepare financially, right? And we can set SMART goals. As I've been mentioning throughout the presentation, financial planning will take time. It is a process that requires a lot of individualized assessment. There are no two caregivers that will need the same financial planning, right? So, really, it can feel like a big undertaking, a very big task to tackle. However, what we suggest is that you make small, attainable, realistic, time bound goals, right? So set SMART goals for yourself. Maybe you will need to, let's say, have everything done in a year in terms of your financial situation as a caregiver, but maybe, give yourself a small task every month. And hopefully that'll make it much more manageable versus trying to do it in a short amount of time, maybe when the financial situation is already not going great or, dire in itself. So taking small proactive steps like setting up SMART goals for yourself can really make a difference to your financial health and your overall health. So making sure that those stress levels are being managed as well. Again, using available resources, planning carefully, and communicating openly. And communication is not just for, let's say, the caregiver and the care receiver, but you as an individual, if other people depend on you financially, it is important to communicate that financial situation with those that depend on you, right? Making sure that there's transparency, that there is that the information is flowing, right? All of this can avoid future conflicts. It can really reduce the stress levels for the caregiver. And again, I'll say it again and again, prioritizing both your financial health and that of your care receiver. Again, a very big undertaking, but it can be done, especially if it's done earlier in the process, if it's done in a neutral and open manner. And again, if the financial aspect of caregiving is not working, it's more stressful, consider bringing in a professional to help with that aspect of managing the financials, right? Because it is an emotional issue. It can be very daunting, very stressful. So making sure that you are planning not just for your caregiver, but also for your future at an older age. Make sure that your finances are in order and that you have a plan as to how you want them to be handled. So if you are having a tough time as a caregiver getting all this information from your care receiver, well, maybe this is a learning opportunity for you as a caregiver, right? How can I make it easier for those that might be caring for me in the future? So everything is a learning opportunity if we so want it to be. But again, hopefully this will help you prepare for the future. Next slide. And of course, I just mentioned it, planning today can help ensure that both you and those you care for are prepared for tomorrow. So, whatever that looks like in your situation, in your family, in your care team, making sure that we're communicating, that we're planning, that we're being proactive for yourself and for, again, for those people that might be caring for you in the future. So, really planning today will make it better for them tomorrow. Next slide, please. So I am going to elaborate a little bit more here. So as you can see on screen, these are the services that Southern Caregiver Resource Center offers. Of course, we have our family consultants, support groups, individual counseling, our education and training department, which includes our TLC and Calma classes, respite, and online resources like I already mentioned. However, our legal and financial consultation is a service that is available for those people who qualify for our services. So basically, we have this service to help the caregiver start planning, ask questions to a professional that is qualified to answer these detailed questions when it comes to caregiving. So really, if you are a client of Southern Caregiver Resource Center and you think that this is a resource that you might benefit from, reach out to your family consultant and ask them. If you're not a client of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, but this is of interest to you and you want to see if you qualify for our services, feel free to reach out, and I'll have that contact information in the last slide. So remember, we are not just a resource, we also offer services for our family caregivers. Next slide, please. And of course, as I always like to mention, part of our goal is to help family caregivers manage difficult situations of caregiving, but also focus on themselves, right? So Southern Caregiver Resource Center offers free classes for family caregivers. For example, our TLC caregiver class, which is in English, and then we have Calma, which is in Spanish. And these classes are specially designed for those family caregivers who are caring for someone who has memory loss, Alzheimer's, or another form of dementia. And these classes do talk about the conditions, but they really focus on self-care for the caregiver, right? How to manage challenging situations, how to bounce back from a crisis, how to avoid isolation as a caregiver. So really, these classes are there to help the caregiver thrive as best as they can. Next slide, please. And I did already mention our iCare portal via our website, but this is a great hub of resources that we have available at your fingertips in the comfort of your own home. We have our Caregiver Corner, which they're very short, quick tip videos that you can watch. They talk about different aspects of caregiving. I mentioned our podcast called Let's Talk Caregiving, which is released once a month, where we have candid conversations on various caregiving topics. We also have a lot of classes that are recorded similar to this live stream, so you can access those whenever you want to. And you can, of course, sign up to our digital newsletter. It's SCRC's Wavelengths newsletter, where you can find the latest information, events that might be coming up, and other tips and resources for family caregivers. And you can do all of this via our website, www.caregivercenter.org. And of course, we have a lot of other resources on there. And we also have a Spanish section for those caregivers who prefer their information in Spanish. So really, I would encourage you to go ahead onto the website and browse all of the materials that we have. Next slide, please. If you are a fan of social media, if you have social media, we are very active and also have a lot of information available via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course our podcast. So you can look at these handles here, and if you want to add us, be in touch with us, find out real time what is going on with SCRC, you can go ahead and add us, reach out to us. But again, we are very active on social media, so feel free to add us to stay up to date. Next slide, please. So here is our contact information. Again, our website is www.caregivercenter.org, or you can call us toll free at 800-827-1008, or our regular number is 858-268-4432. We are available to answer your phone call Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. If you call us during a holiday or during non-working hours, feel free to leave a message and we will get back to you within 48 hours. But again, if you are interested in what other resources we have, what other information we have, our webpage is there for you. We have a lot of resources available whenever you want to look at them at your fingertips. So feel free to check us out via our website. I want to thank you all very much for being with me today at another live stream. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Take care.